welcome to the China EVs and More podcast. In the next hour or so, my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. I met a ton of people this week, so maybe there's a couple of you there. For our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you smash those subscribe and like buttons and make some comments or questions so you don't miss anything from us in the future. Lei and I are two of the most knowledgeable people doing this, so help us get the word out to others about this podcast. My name is Tu Lee. I'm the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which, of course, I encourage you all to do. A Phoenix-bound Lei, can you please introduce yourself? Phoenix Lei.
Yeah, first time in Phoenix. First time in the Valley of the Sun. I can finally say why it's called the Valley of the Sun. So this is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. Excuse me. And this is episode 214. Yes, and also to a traveling back home too. And still traveling on the road for... Oh, God, I've been on the road since the 16th from Orlando to Phoenix. And, first time in Phoenix. Done a lot of Waymos.
Oh, really? Okay, nice.
My family have tried Waymo a few times. First time and an additional time. So
Is it pretty easy to get? Oh, yeah, you're using the Waymo app, though. You're using
Waymo
the Waymo
app. Yeah, Waymo app. And I'll tell you, the Tesla stands were happy to hear this. Waymo is definitely not perfect because my wife and daughter actually say a human driver in some of the Ubers and Lyfts that we've taken over the last few days is actually better drivers, better drivers.
Yeah, that's
because the Waymo,
that's fair.
They tap on the brakes at the intersection, which make people sitting in the back kind of nauseous a little bit, not to a great extent, but you know what I'm,
Yeah,
we've done the Waymos in LA, and we also had that experience. So, but nevertheless, I mean, I've done 5 rides already. It's just like go out, get somewhere, Waymo, and
man, sounds like a pretty expensive Phoenix trip.
Well, we get 35% off for 4 rides. So.
Oh, okay, got it.
Talk about stickiness, right?
Well, you should just get your wife to download the app, and then she can get 35% off of her rides.
Exactly. So. And so in Phoenix, right, Waymo is something that you do here. The sun, obviously, hot. It's 110-degree weather, just pure dry heat. I've experienced
so you're not super sweaty.
No. We actually walked 10 minutes yesterday afternoon in that type of weather, and it was kind of like being barbecued slowly, but wasn't too bad.
It's like Vegas.
No, I think it's definitely the heat is definitely more heat. There's more heat than Vegas. But
okay. Speaking
of hot. You know where I'm going with this.
Yes, I do. Actually, there's already a comment about it. We will hold off until the end of the show, but SPX, I think, posted something just now.
Because the internet has been broken by the Xiaomi YU7 launch the last 24, 48 hours.
And this absolutely says that the SU7 tragedy is in the rearview mirror, distantly in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, what tragedy?
But I just kept on watching the Lei Jun feed on X, and he was posting these tear sheet specifications.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of features packed into it. So,
and I think at this point, the features doesn't matter anymore.
it doesn't.
The range, the 10 million clips, the 3,944 kilometers they've done in a 24-hour test, the specs, the hardware. We're looking at something that I think I still am wrapping my head around, because when those poster came out, I'll be honest, I had to roll my eyes and look at it and say, was there an extra zero? Okay, there was. It wasn't 28,900. It was 289,000.
And to give people a better sense of what that means, their factory in Beijing currently has about 150,000 units of capacity. Well, that's what I was going to say. So they have another factory that already has 150. So they have a total of 300,000 units of capacity, Chabuduo, give or take. And that means, remember that the SU7 is also on sale. And if the SU7 is already delivering 100 and something thousand units, that means in the next 12 months, there's only going to be 100 at the most, less than 200,000 of those U7s launched, and that's if they work a ton of overtime.
Capacity, 2 plants, 300,000 units. Assuming, I'm not sure what shift that is, whether it's a single or a double shift. I think
it's got to be a double shift.
Double shift. Okay, so let's say double shift, and they have set a goal of 350,000 deliveries. They've completed 130.
Actually, let me take that back. It could be a single shift, but it might be 6 days. I'll figure that out for the next show.
Yeah, right. 300,000 capacity, 350,000 delivery target. They've completed 135,000 in the first 5 months. June will be roughly around 30,000 units, so that's 160,000.
Well, and remember, the U7, it looks like it's already started production, so job one is already done. But it'll take probably some ramp, right? It'll take probably quarters worth of ramp to get to full production.
The pictures of the 3 rows of U7s lined up outside the factory in Beijing. They look pretty
ready to go. They look ready for delivery.
So I think we're expecting deliveries.
Which is weird because the customers, they must be really fully featured. They must be just optioned out, because I don't know why you would make 20, 30, 40,000 units like that. Because unless you have a really, really good idea of what colors, what options people, and what trim people will want.
Well, over the last year or so, they've been previewing these specs and colors and interiors in a methodical way, so the consumers will probably know what it is, how it looks like, the styling and hardware. But
so here's a little story that if you build ahead too early, too soon. Remember when Apple had those iPod minis that had 4 colors, gold, silver, like a burgundy, and some blue color? So they built ahead, put them in the retail, and then forecasted that one specific color, so they didn't know what the take rate was going to be per color, so they guessed. They were completely wrong, and so a couple of colors didn't sell well at all. One color sold a ton, and that was the iPod mini. So there's a chance that happens. I'm sure they'll be able to sell those vehicles, but it just seems like a MAFON thing. So
yeah, I think every one kind of color that's been ordered, that it's going to sell, because on the launch they added some more colors, exterior colors, right, to the ones that they've already previewed.
And maybe people will be like, you know what, I want this, and then Xiaomi says, well, I have that color, but it's with these option package. Do you want it or not? And they'll probably say yes.
And one of the we talk about pricing a little bit, right? 53,500, a weird starting price point that nobody guessed correctly. I think myself included, I was thinking 249,000, right, just below 250,000, but they came out with the interesting starting price point. And then,
well, remember that the RMB is weak on the US dollar, so
yeah. So, but another interesting thing is the Max has been sold out. 售起, which means sold out. Max is the 330,000 renminbi version,
which is like 47 grand or something like that.
Yeah, and if you think about that, the starting price, which is roughly 35,000 to the 47,000, $47,000 is the average price of a vehicle in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And in China, you can get a spec'd out Xiaomi YU7.
But let me ask you, what is this a no obligation reservation again? Like, 100 RB, 500 RB, you can get your money back kind of thing, or no?
So the 5,000 RMB is the firm 7-day refundable deposit.
Yep.
If you don't do anything with it, it'll be a locked-in order. And then for the locked-in order, it'll be 20,000. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Non-refundable. So if you decide not to take delivery or just not do anything with it, you just lose the 20,000 RMB.
Got it. So I'm thinking about it is about $800 bucks. I definitely want it is almost $3,000.
Yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Should I be excited or afraid of AI? The answer is yes. It's both.
Things are going to look so different in the next couple years. You will not be ready for the disruptions that are going to come. I'm Jeff Nielsen, host of Digital Disruption, the go-to podcast for technology leaders.
Our generation's conflict, I think, is going to be emotional, not economic.
The companies that are going to win are the ones that have a couple of characteristics.
Stay ahead of the curve with Digital Disruption. Available now on your favorite podcast platform.
So that was interesting. And then the other very interesting thing is they gave 3 days, right, until June 29th. If you have a locked-in order of the SU7, you can transfer that to the U7, which I think a lot of people did. Because the U7, you just pay a little bit more. 10,000, 20,000 RMB more, you get a SUV. Maybe
unfortunately, for the SU7, it just seems like a better car because they learned from a lot from the SU7.
Yeah, so after all the this dust, we have the 240,000 locked in orders in 18 hours, right? This is in the past. It's a number that's still, it's hard to explain. I've never seen anything like this before. Maybe, what can be compared to? I don't know.
Well, it can be the original iPhone. It could be the original iPhone craze. Yeah, Cybertruck, but
maybe. I actually think the most painful company, the company that is being affected most, is Xiaomi itself, not Tesla, not others, because now the competitors will come in and say, you're going to wait for 12 to 18 months for U7. Hey, I have something available in a few weeks. You want to, I think that's kind of the dynamic we're seeing, but also at the same time.
Well, I don't,
right, how many of those 240,000 locked in orders, the people are willing to wait it out, given this current environment? Right? These are questions.
I think those are tremendous numbers. I don't think they'll all end up being buyers.
Yeah. So that's why, I kind of tweeted the $1 million questions. How many, right, those are willing to wait? And what are we going to see as a delivery of the U7 this year? What's your hunch? Throw me a number. What do you think? How many U7s are going to be delivered?
80,000.
80,000?
Because so let's do this. So they have both factories online now, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And in the U.S., the estimates used to be 200 days. You would work 200 days. Okay, so we're in the middle of summer. So let's say a little over 100 days that they're going to be working. Okay, and divide that by 150. That means divide that by 150. Now we're talking about 15,000 units a day, right? So 7,500 per factory. So that's the run rate they'll need to get to that 150,000 units by the end of this year, meaning that the factories are running 100% for the rest of the year in order to get to 150,000 units total, of which, let's say 80,000 are U7s and 70,000 are SU7s. Now, the ratio of sales is probably 2-1, but the U7, because it's a new car, I don't think the suppliers would be able to ramp like that either. Mm-hmm. So the constraint is not the production. The constraint is likely going to be if the suppliers can supply to demand. And I don't know if they can do that, because the constraint is likely not going to be how many can Xiaomi produce. The constraint is likely going to be how much can be supplied to produce.
Yeah. Exactly. Speaking of suppliers, so the battery, the BYD and CATL both supply the LFPs, and CATL exclusively supplies the 101 kilowatt hour for the Max.
They posted about it.
Sorry?
On social. They posted on social about it.
Yeah, right. And then Hesai, right? They posted the 100% of the 289,000 orders.
And they should. I think these are, because how hard and how low they must have bid to get that for Xiaomi. Because, again, let me go back to NVIDIA and Apple back when I was working there. Jensen wanted nothing more than to be able to say, we are in the next-gen PowerBook. At the time, the MacBook Pro was called a PowerBook, if you remember that, Lay. So it's the same thing. So it's important. It's a win. It creates prestige for these companies. So
I think in terms of overall sales, right, we go back to the 350,000 total target. I will pick a number higher than you. I would say 100,000 units.
Okay.
Which is not unachievable.
But hold on. You just said 350. You said 350. So 350. Are we saying 350 or 300?
Yeah. So 100,000 of those will be U7s.
Okay.
And they have to do it in 6 months, basically, right? The rest of the year.
Yep.
Which is more than 16,000 a month. That's, again, unheard of. I can't think of any product that ramps and then delivers. But
and remember, Lay, it won't be linear. It'll be 5,000, 6,000 first month, 8,000, 9,000. And then in November, there needs to be 20,000 units, 22,000 units, 23,000 units.
Yeah, so that's...
And that's what I mean by the supplier. Maybe they can supply 15, but they might not be able to supply 22.
Right.
For November, December production, So...
Yeah, so because the reason I'm saying that, because we always underestimate. And Xiaomi, they've proven that they've always over-delivered, at least from a volume standpoint. And I don't think anybody guessed or expected this order intake will be in the 200,000, nearly 300,000 range.
It was perfect. It was perfect timing. It's the middle of summer. Nobody's paying attention. They flew foreign journalists over, or at least two that I know of, that Lambert guy and Kevin.
Kevin, yeah. So
I'm sure they invited others.
And their team, their branding, marketing team are super, right? Lei Jun was tweeting, although obviously it wasn't him tweeting because he was speaking at the...
he was prolific on his tweets or his social media. We can't call them tweets anymore, I guess, but
Yeah, and both in China and internationally. I mean, it's a gold standard, I think.
So I told you, but I'll tell the audience. I was in Atlanta yesterday for a small, very very intimate conference. I was actually at the Porsche North America headquarters, and got to meet Abi.
Finally, all right.
We did not actually spend that much time together. He was in the same building that I was, and so I missed Elon too. So unfortunately, I forgot he lived down in Atlanta. So next time. But what was funny was I was doing a small presentation, like almost like a TED Talk, and so I had some slides that I wanted to show, and knowing that I was getting fed all this Xiaomi information from some of the guys, some of the people at the event, I downloaded all of the tear sheet specs, and the last 3 slides of my presentation was hot off the presses and the pictures of those tear sheets. And then my last slide, Lay, and you'll get a kick out of this, was a picture of a Chevy Equinox, and the title was "For the Same Price."
You're dunking on your hometown team.
So an Equinox starts at around 40,000. So, but man, it is a frenzy, and timing was perfect for him, and people were paying attention, even though it's the middle of summer.
I think a lot of people point to Xiaomi's marketing gimmicks, Lei Jun's showmanship. That's fine. I'd agree, but I think what they have shown in the last 4.5 years is this total like drive and just try to come out with almost a perfect product, and you add on the Xiaomi badge onto the vehicle, and it sells like hotcakes. And that's basically what we're seeing. And based on the reviews that we've seen from both, the all of the Chinese media that tested, including Mark, right, that already tested the vehicles, that it's a different animal. It's than the SU7, but they also expect that the SU7 will continue to be a product that will be in hot demand.
And continue to take sales from the Model 3.
Yeah, I think Model 3, again, I've said this before, Model 3 is relatively irrelevant in the Chinese market, I think. Model Y is still important, but we know that even if they maintain the sales, the pie is getting bigger and their share is getting smaller. And we're already seeing the stats, right? We're already seeing the data. Not in China, but obviously other parts of the world.
Well, one thing that seems to me pretty certain now, there were a couple people that tweeted it or posted on social that I trust. It seems like Q1 sales for the Model Y, or Tesla at least, will be better than Q2 sales, which doesn't happen. And so that is not good. And although they want to point to this shiny little object that is happening in Austin, what is their business foundation? It's selling cars. So
we'll go back to that, but a reference, Model Y sells in China, domestic sales about, let's say, 25,000 a month. It's only a matter of time, not if, but when the U7 tops that. Only a matter of time.
And to give people a better idea, there's about 630,000 units sold total for Tesla in China in 2024. I want to say it's like almost a 2-to-1 ratio of Model Ys to Model 3s. So let's say 350 Model Ys were shipped in China in 2024. So that monthly average is more than 25. But again, we're a year from 2024, number one. So the Model Y has lost a tremendous amount of momentum. 2024, the price reductions, the non-price reductions really still boosted sales of the Model Y. 2025, there's the i8 from Li Auto, there's the L90 from Onvo, there's the G7 from Xpeng. There's one more, isn't there?
So
That,
yeah, the i8, including the i6, Envoy L90, the G7, tons more, right? But these are the ones that are big launches. And speaking of, right, Li Auto is actually taking a proactive approach. They're actually they just made a announcement that they're the Q2 guidance, they shrinked it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right, in order to prepare, in order to align the organizational structure for the launch of the i8. Which was quite
and remember, let's a little background. The i8. So right now they ship one vehicle, the Mega, that is a BEV. The i8 is going to be a BEV. So I think that's part of the reason they're trying to line up all these different disparate things in order to kind of start on the right foot.
Yeah, and then it was interesting. I also tweeted that this kind of the camaraderie among these CEOs supporting each other's product launches on social media. And even Exxon may have had to make way for the G7 launch because of the U7 launch. Right. These kind of the dynamics that are behind the scenes. And now we can, U7's in the rearview mirror. The next is G7. The next is Envoy L90. The next is i8. Right. Week after week, we have these blockbuster launches. Tesla is feeling pain. They're all SUVs.
So
they're small.
So we're in summer. This means that job one of all these vehicles will ship before the end of summer, I believe. I think the IA is sometime in middle of July.
Yeah, it's launches, but I think
it doesn't start delivery until
early part of Q3. Yeah.
Okay.
For the launch, for the delivery.
So the i8 is not going to be super relevant right now. The G7 is also next month, July,
week.
Right? Next week, yeah. So, and one thing that I do want to mention, Lei, is that in a room full of Americans yesterday, it was eye-opening for a lot of them how I talked about what's going on, showed them pictures, and kind of after my presentation, lots of folks were like, "Hey, man, great presentation, very objective viewpoint. We totally understand that you are a Michigander and American, but how you talked about what's going on in China really is eye-opening." So got a lot of that. Reason I bring that up, Lei, is because I hope in my heart that the GMs, the Fords, the Stellantises, the Volkswagens are really looking at this launch and taking copious notes about how to engage customers, how to bring excitement to products, how to design something that in totality, it looks like something else. I mean, at least I take that back. Visually, it looks like something else, but in totality is a completely different product. I just hope that they're saying that this is a globally relevant thing that we can learn from, as opposed to it's the China market. Chinese consumers aren't the same as Europeans and Americans, because you and I hear shit like that, stuff like that all the time, and it bothers me to no end. But I just feel that it's a missed opportunity if people aren't paying attention in the West to how engaged Xiaomi consumers are for this product.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say about this, Lei, is that those little design cues, because one of the things that Kevin posted about, was the Kleenex magnet right behind the infotainment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are small details that do sell.
and
And
all,
that-
but they all add up to you're paying attention.
And then one of the part of the press conference was how Beijing iterated how they're friendly to the Apple iPhone owners. You don't have to have a Xiaomi phone for this to work, for the ecosystem, right? And then these tag-on, the add-ons, the hardware add-ons, right? The phone holders, the speedometers, little things.
What would be interesting to see, Lei? Because you raise a great point. How many iPhone users are buying Xiaomi EVs? Number one. Number two, how many convert to using a Xiaomi phone after they purchase their? Because there's going to be more seamlessness between the Xiaomi EV and the Xiaomi phone
Sure.
than an Apple phone.
Sure.
But that would be interesting statistics.
I'm sure that the Xiaomi, they have those kind of data, but right, these female owners are actually a major part of Xiaomi customers. The conversion from the BBA owners who are buying additional vehicles, they're going over to our Xiaomi, right?
Talk about people needing a hug. The BBA and the Porsche people in China must be like, oh my goodness,
and
how are we going to compete with this?
They're, going back to an earlier comment that they're probably holding their head just from that slide on the Nürburgring lap records.
Oh yeah, the SU7.
The SU7 Ultra prototype. How a 4.5-year-old EV company or brand can improve that track record by over 22 seconds. And when you're a Porsche or when you're a Mercedes or when you're a Lotus, these 70, 80-year-old companies spending...
That pride yourself on engineering and speed and being able to drive into corners with your product, things like that. So
a lot of questions to take away home for these legacy competitors, and they've learned. I think Toyota. I think they're going the right way in China with their recent launches. They even posted. No, it wasn't Toyota. It was somebody. Yeah, it was Toyota. They had a poster of the BZ7 because they had a 7 on it. Some kind of like a congratulatory message to YU7, right? It's guerrilla marketing. And guess what? They all have Chinese tech, major Chinese tech on their upcoming EVs. Same as Volkswagen, same as Mercedes, but we won't see them until 2026.
So that's great. It's late, but better late than never. And let's hope that with this extra time that they're using to get these products on the road, there aren't serious software issues with them, because it would be a shame, like Cariad with the ID series vehicles. They rush these vehicles on the road and all kinds of software problems. And GM with the Blazer here in the United States. So the other thing that I think is so. Did you want to move to something else, or do you want to say anything else about the U7?
No, I think we can talk about the U7 for hours,
all day long. Yeah,
right. So because
we're just going to need to get behind the wheel in July, I guess. Huh?
Well, that's probably one of the first things I try to do when I go back next week. So to get hands on a U7 and feel it, because the reviews say it's different than the SU7, but on an SUV, it's still sporty, which is what it wants to do, but more family spacious features to it.
So one of the tear sheets talked about 36 like compartments.
Yeah, so the leg room, the headroom, right? The comparisons with the Wire and the
zero gravity seats for front and back. So very, very thoughtful, thoughtful design, I think. And I think that's going to win over a lot of Chinese consumers. Now, Trump hot off the presses. So let me tell you another quick story about yesterday's conference. I was talking about how premium is being redefined in China. and I mentioned in 2022 a certain brand minus 2% year-over-year growth. The next year minus 15% year-over-year growth, and then the next year minus 28%. And then Q1 of 2025 minus 42% year-over-year. And so the gentleman after me, he was like, "Hey, wanted to." I'd heard security talking outside, and I think they're going to be escorting Thule out of the building because you know what brand I was talking about in China. So
well, there's two brands in Atlanta that's quite relevant to the auto industry, and they're both from Stuttgart.
yeah, so yeah, and anyways, and you guys know I was at the Porsche, so that's why he had joked around about that, and they all kind of laughed. But so hot off the press, Trump cancels negotiations with Canada. So if this stays the way it is with the impasse between Canada and the United States and a lack of a trade agreement, you can book Canadian dealers selling Chinese cars within the next 6 to 9 to 12 months.
But by this point, we know Trump's acts, so he could be coming right back and we have a deal with Canada.
Yeah. So, but
I mean, the way he's,
I'm so close to Canada, and there's a lot of Canadians where I live, and they are really, really mad at the U.S. Really, really mad. I've never seen them like this.
Yeah.
So, I was like, not me,
U7,
man.
I think we're done with U7 for now, but going to a very relevant point you made about selling vehicles as a business model. Does that ensure $1 trillion market cap for a company that starts with a T? Or does revenues from sharing of these existing fleets of vehicles ensure, not selling vehicles, ensure the $1 trillion market cap, right? This is what we're talking about with respect to the so-called robotaxi launch last Sunday with great fanfare, myself included, right? That's the question.
You're such a fanboy.
I am. And the fans, the stands will always come right back and say, we're doing this without LiDAR. We're doing this without, achieving this, the vision only.
It's unsupervised. Although there's somebody sitting in the passenger seat, it's unsupervised. So,
right. So that's one of the things. Two, can they change exactly that game established by the robotaxi, the pure plays, the Baidus, the Waymos? I'm taking a lot of Waymos. I love to take a Tesla robotaxi when it expands, but that's the question, because that's the reality that Tesla is facing right now, because they're losing sales. They're not going to get to the 1.8 million this year. They're going to have a negative growth. And perhaps going
highly
forward,
negative.
Yeah, perhaps going forward, they may be retreating in sales if they don't have the products that can compete.
That capacity, let's say 300,000 in Berlin, 400,000 in Austin, 4 in Fremont, 1 million units in Shanghai. That's going to hang on their neck like a huge weight. So they don't have any new products really that I can think of. A Model 2 is not going to be this clear-cut winner in any of these markets now.
Right, and then they just let the head of manufacturing? What's the guy's name? Omar or something?
I don't know.
Right,
I'm not sure.
He left or was fired. I think one of the HR people left.
Yep. And one of the but they hired a cruise guy.
Right,
Cruise. So
So if we're only talking about selling EVs, Tesla is in a precarious spot right now.
But let's just go by sheer data, sheer numbers. Yesterday or Sunday was the first day for robotaxis for Tesla in the city of Austin. Waymo, you and I have experienced it. Now you've experienced it in 3 cities.
Waymo just launched in Atlanta through Uber.
I tried to call one, and so I canceled it. I called 3 times and I canceled it. And I stayed at a hotel at the airport, so it wouldn't go there anyway. So I was just going to drive it around the city and change addresses. But because I saw a couple riding around. Unfortunately, I didn't get to call one. But Tesla launches on Sunday with about 10 to 20 robotaxis. 10 to 20. Okay. Waymo, they're in Austin. They're in Phoenix. They're in LA. They're in San Francisco. They just announced that they're trying to get their permit for New York City. 4-season city. So this is a lot different than the current cities that it's in. Okay. They have about 500 robotaxis in service right now.
I'll give you one reference point. So it's interesting in Phoenix, downtown Phoenix, or actually the area where Waymo operates, there's nobody on the streets, walking on the streets, no pedestrians, no bikers.
It's too hot.
Just too hot. And that creates the perfect conditions for the robotaxis because it's relatively less complex. Actually, my wife and I were talking about that while riding one. We were kind of like debating each other. So
I think San Francisco is decently messy. New York is going to be clearly their most challenging market for now.
LA, we know it was messy recently. So
yeah, and then Baidu in China, they operate in 10, 12, 14 cities. Half of those cities are no safety driver. They have about 1,000 robotaxis in all these cities. If you add up Pony, you add up WeRide, you add up Deep Route, and a few of these other smaller companies, there's probably another 400 robotaxis. So in China,
and then there's the different form factors. Not only the passenger carrying, right? There's the ones.
And so in China, there's, let's say, robotaxi wise, there's about 14 to 1,500. So Tesla has 10, Waymo has 500, Baidu has about 1,000. So what's never clear to me is these analysts that say it's a multi-trillion-dollar company, they don't ever tell you percentage-wise how much of that valuation is based on them dominating the China market, right? Are they saying that it's a multi-trillion-dollar market just in North America, or are they going to dominate the world? It's never clear to me.
Theoretically, with their fleets all over the world, that is the aim.
But the assumption
China,
that
what's going on with FSD, so
exactly. So the assumption is that FSD will get worked out in China. You and I know that is not a done deal, and there's no guarantee on that. In Europe, there's no guarantee of that. And so it's largely just North America that, in my estimation, these analysts are saying make Tesla a multi-trillion-dollar company. I want Tesla to have great robotaxis. I want more competition in robotaxis, to be quite frank, in the United States, because without Cruise, we lost 33% of the competitors. But the reality is they're almost like a rounding error in the totality of global robotaxis on the road.
Yeah, so it's just Waymo, Tesla trying to be one, Zoox maybe, starting, May Mobility.
I know you've had your head in volleyball matches, but did you see that Uber is looking at acquiring Pony?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal, I want to say, that Uber has spoken with Travis Kalanick to try to kick the tires on Pony to see if it could be
Well, they
acquired.
are working together outside of China, so anything could happen.
So
Right.
that also means that they're talking to WeRide.
I'm certain.
I'm also certain that they probably made inquiries into Deep Route.
Yeah, I think Uber, that's kind of their, maybe going back a little bit to their original intention when TK, right, when he was around, of when he said at a conference in Beijing 10 years ago that they wanted to achieve mobility flowing like water, which means the robotaxi must be a big component of it.
So let's talk about how this changes things for Uber and for Pony. First of all, Pony is a Chinese robotaxi company that it plans to operate in Europe. That hasn't been sorted out because there's a data challenge from a policy standpoint. There's a hardware software potentially, right? The European Union hasn't called any of those issues out or challenges out yet. So will they allow Chinese hardware and software running on European roads? The reason I bring that up is because there are policies in the United States that prevent that for private passenger vehicles. And then with Uber, if they were to acquire, it doesn't matter if it's Pony or WeRide or Deep Route or Waymo, they would have a competing service on their platform when they're partnering with robotaxi companies, unless they're servicing different countries or different cities in countries. So, they're going to be frenemies, it looks like. And we should always remember that Uber used to have the Advanced Technical Group, the ATG group in Pittsburgh. It ran over a woman on a bike, killed her, shut it down, sold it to Aurora, which is the commercial trucking commercial trucking autonomous vehicle company in Pittsburgh. So tangled web we weave, Lay. Tangled web.
Yeah, so I think Tesla is right now is probably the only one. First, a traditional automaker, not a pure play robotaxi company, to achieve the second one that has fleets all over the world. So they're the one company that wants to make autonomy work in every region of the world. Can they do that? Waymo can, because Waymo is U.S. focused, is North America focused. And then they're not going, at least they're in Japan, but the Chinese, they're also China focused, but they're expanding rapidly to the Middle East, Southeast Asia.
And remember, now there's Wave in a UK company too.
UK, but there's no one company that can be a global AV player yet. And Tesla to do it.
And there may never be one.
Yeah.
Depending on the data policies, not only where they reside, but the security and the privacy of them.
Yeah, but if Tesla can do it globally, then I'd agree with the analysts that they add the trillion or 10 trillion, whatever.
No,
but at the same time, it's still losing sales. Can they have that enough revenues to support?
Because my underlying assumption for these analysts that are saying it's a multi-trillion-dollar company is that they're assuming that Tesla would dominate every market that it's in. It's not going to dominate China. It's just not. It's not going to dominate the United States unless Waymo goes away. So, it's just, these are interesting things we're talking about because it's an interesting time, especially now that the Trump administration is kind of taking a different tack when it comes to, they haven't really talked about, they haven't canceled those policies from the Biden administration, but they haven't really talked about them either. And so I think this is interesting. Hey, we are getting towards an hour, so I don't have anything else. How about you?
Same here. I mean, we're at the midway point of 2025, and the recent last week, the robotaxi plus the YU7 launch, I think, was a good kind of the culmination of the first half of I mean, it's an understatement to say, again, an interesting first half in the industry. But fireworks,
Well,
they're coming.
I think you'll have a head start on me in China, and then I'll meet you in China. I won't be there the entire time, but I'll try to do a couple things that I've been wanting to do. So we should probably be able to update folks on some of the things. I don't know what they will be yet, because it just depends on availability of vehicles and people. So
I mean, the first
I don't
thing
want to say anything yet.
Land after in China is definitely check out the U7. I mean, there's right, there's no brainer.
So,
and yeah.
So moving to questions. Good afternoon, guys. So SPX, thank you, number one, for being a loyal live streamer, even though today's episode is 7 hours later. Yeah. And it was supposed to be 6 hours later.
Actually, it works out better for me since I'm on the West Coast. So, but
I'm not going to make any excuses, but Delta delayed my flight. So his comment is, with U7's explosive launch, what edge does the Model Y have left in China? How do other major options compare in the mid 2003? How I think we kind of talked about it, but Lei, why don't you go ahead?
I think the only edge they have left in China is that, similar to the Xiaomi cult, there's still a significant Tesla cult. The customer base.
There are Chinese Tesla stands.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, in a more positive sense, because they still think Tesla as a global brand that is produced in multiple parts of the world. It's the number one selling EV in the world. Vehicle in the world, and they're continuing to push the current 5-year zero financing and 8,000 insurance subsidy, kind of. So, I mean, the sales are still quite significant, but again, right, we said even if they maintain, let's say, a 25,000 Model Ys per month, their shares are getting smaller. And with these oncoming killers, I don't know what edge they still have besides the kind of the brand, still the brand aura that's still, in some sense, a lot less than years past. But other than that, on if you compare the pure tech spec, they're already being killed, right? U7 is the latest example. The G7 is coming. G7, we said, is going to be obviously priced lower than the U7, in the 200,000 to 250,000 range, which XPeng is very confident of. The Li Auto BEVs, these are coming, and Tesla does not have an additional model to bring to the plate.
And as far as I know, they're not doing any small tweaks to the Model Y for the rest of this year. So
no.
What I'll say is, in trying to find something positive, you'd mentioned brand loyalty. There are some Chinese consumers that are loyal to the Tesla brand. I agree with that. The second thing is that the charging infrastructure is pretty substantial in China. So, and again, I'm searching for something to be positive about for the Tesla Model Y. When you say 25, I want to remind the folks that when we get into the later months of 2025, that's when they get to the 70, the 80, the 90,000 units historically. And that is not likely going to be happening. And it's almost a double whammy, because domestic sales are down and their exports are also going to be down. So that absolute number, the production number or the sell number, not for domestic, but total sales, is going to be lower, unfortunately, for the Model Y, probably.
But again, I'll reiterate this. Tesla is not, they're going to be relevant. They're not done, right, in China. But again, the U7 surpassing the Model Y sales, monthly sales, matter of time.
I would argue, Lei, that they're relevant still, but they're doing everything in their power to not be relevant, it seems like.
And again, we're at the end of June, starting July. Let's see what incentives they announce.
Well, first of all, let's see if Q2 numbers are lower than Q1 numbers, because my favorite GIF is the panic button. So I might have to pull that out if Q2 numbers are pretty anemic. At Preza, this month, Tesla is in the hard times. Tesla Model Y versus Xiaomi YU7 versus XPeng G7 versus Li Auto i8 versus Envo L90. You're absolutely right, Apreza. I think that... So we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's going to be a stagger on some of these launches, but I think the G7 is probably going to be... Aside from the U7, the G7 is probably going to be really close in the Model Y's rearview mirror.
And again, we said this, I said this, these other competitors to the U7 launching, they'll be saying, hey, look, we can deliver our vehicles faster. Come on over. If you hesitate,
So what we can anticipate internally from Xiaomi is that the sourcing guys are working every day, contacting their suppliers to pull in schedule. And they're putting pressure on the suppliers to put pressure on their suppliers, the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, to work overtime in order to get more components to the factories in Beijing. And so the art to what the manufacturing operations team in Xiaomi is probably going to be to figure out what the right mix is. Because if you were a SU7 buyer or ordered a SU7, you don't want your lead time to now get pushed out by a month, 6 weeks. You're not going to be very happy about that. So you still got to balance SU7 deliveries with U7 ramp and U7 deliveries.
That's the balancing act of Lei Jun and company. That's going to be difficult.
Because there will be people that complain, and you know that, I know that.
Oh,
full stop. There will be people that complain. And unfortunately, if it goes viral, that's when things will get a little dicey for Xiaomi.
The U7 has turned into a war of words, even among the leading KOLs in China. Even among the senior executives of competitors. Shouting match. Because
they feel the pressure. They feel the heat.
Yeah, just like Jack Wei saying this guy is the evergrande of the auto industry.
I don't have anything else. So, Lei, have a good weekend in Phoenix. Everyone, thanks for joining us as always. We will catch you all next week when Lei will be in Beijing. So,
that's correct.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Good afternoon from my side. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Li, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.